co-facilitator of FemTechNet, and she's on the Haystack Steering Committee. And she's co-founder of a group called #TransformDH, which means digital humanities, and I'm sure she'll talk about that today. Dr. Kuhn has developed open access resources for digital teaching and projects related to media and technology, digital humanities, and critical race and ethnicity studies with FemTechNet, with TransformDH and Haystack. Her published work includes Debates in Digital Humanities 2016, co-authored with Moireli, Alexis Lyon, and Amanda Phillips, and papers on digital technology and urban media ecology, and created a crowd in various journals. To my left, helping us with our technical issues, Dr. Leah Cohen. She's faculty in the Communication Faculty Department at Daystar University in Nairobi, Kenya. Dr. Cohen's areas of research include the domestication of communication technologies in sub-Saharan Africa, thinking about how human technology and context interrelate, create interrelated forms as part of social assemblages that intersect for development. She looks specifically at the affordances of media technologies to enable innovation, development, and agriculture. Her published articles include PISA, Socioeconomic Centrage in Rural Kenya, and Understanding Mobile Phone Sharing in Rural Kenya. And there's more in the pipeline. Online, and not yet with us. I'll wait, I'll introduce her when she's online, but she will be here. At the very end, Dr. Andy Ogle is a professor and director of the Digital Media Production Program in the School of Communication at Florida State University. His research focuses on environmental communication, community engagement, and experiential education. Dr. Ogle is a multimedia activist and scholar. He is co-author with Greg Elmer of the Preempting Defense, the Politics of an Inevitable Future. In 2011, he produced the documentary Eating Justice, Mark B. Anderson's story. In 2015, with his class, he created the environmental Project Nero, that advocated for climate change legislation right in the Florida legislature. And more recently, he's working on the Apalachicola River Project, an interdisciplinary project to draw attention to the Apalachicola River, which is designated the most threatened river in the United States. Finally, two members of our #ICA play team. First ever game at ICA. Robbie Rattan is part of this group, Dr. Robbie Rattan, and unfortunately he can't be here. Andy Ogle is also part of this group. We have, by immediate right, Dr. Allison Eden and Dr. Jamie Banks. Dr. Eden is assistant professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Michigan State University. It's on understanding media enjoyment from a psychological perspective. Enjoyment in our attention to and selection of media content.
Studies the effects of entertainment on behavior and well-being. Her work has been published in JOC, Journal of Media Psychology, and Mass Communication and Society, amongst others. She's a founding member of ICA's Communication and Biology Interest Group. Finally, awesome. Hello. Dr. Jamie Banks, Assistant Professor, Department of Communication Studies, West Virginia University, and Research Associate at WVU's Interaction Lab. Her research is situated at the intersections of communication technology and human identity, particularly human technology relationships, from wearable technologies to smartphones, game avatars, and social media profiles. Her research has been published in New Media and Society and Information, Communication and Society. She is co-editor of the forthcoming volume, Avatar Assembled, the Social and Technical Anatomy of Digital Bodies. And finally, let us welcome Dr. Maha Bali. Hi, can you hear us? Great, can we hear you?
Can we hear you?
Can you? Can you hear me? Please say yes.
Let me see her.
She's on the screen on the right.
Right.
Can you hear me? I can hear you guys really well. Ah, you not hear me? Looks like you hear
you well.
I can't hear you.
I'll introduce her.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-oh. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, easily come up and do this.
Let me come on your side so I can get the microphone. Dr. Maha Bali is Associate Professor of Practice at the Center for Learning and Teaching, America University in Cairo, and the International Director of the Digital Pedagogy Lab there. She is a professional hacker and a central blogger for DML, the Digital Media and Learning Research Hub funded by the MacArthur Foundation. She is co-founder of the project Virtually Connected that brings informal conversations via telecommunication by those who are not attending this conference into this conference and other conferences. And she had one of these events here at ICA during this conference. And she's published critical work on this, which she calls work on Z connection. Dr. Bali's research focuses on educational technology, digital pedagogy, open education, and educational game design. She is editor for the open access online journal Hybrid Pedagogy. And her published scholarship includes, addresses the practice and potentials of reconnecting, and a notable forthcoming article with Shyam Sharma that offers a post-colonial perspective on MOOCs and the EdTech platform, to be published in Disrupt DH, edited by Dorothy Kim and Jesse Stommel. So it is a pleasure. Will you please join me in welcoming our opening plenary? All right, we're gonna work on being able to hear you, Maha. But with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Anne Kwong Hewen to the podium to deliver the first address. We're going to have presentations for about 10 minutes, and then we'll workshop some questions up here, and we'll invite questions from the floor. Thank you for your patience, and the floor is yours. Thank you, Anne.
All right, thank you, Paula, for the invitation to speak today and for the lovely introduction. And thank you all for coming out this afternoon and sticking it out. So let me start with just a bit of context, since I come here from a slightly different institutional position than most of the people gathered here. As Paula mentioned, I'm the digital scholar and the coordinator of the Digital Liberal Arts Collaboratory located in the library at Whittier College. So supporting digital pedagogy and research is quite literally my job at Whittier. Though I teach my own course as a digital scholar, I'm not a faculty member. I am what has been referred to as an alt-ac staff member or alternative academic. I'm part of a recent wave of PhDs who have learned to be flexible and versatile in this new economy of scarcity in the academy. We occupy positions that digital humanists, or more accurately, humanities PhDs with digital training, have been particularly well suited to fill. We work in libraries, we run labs, centers, and collectives. Whether mandated by our job descriptions or not, our work is to build the bridges and resources that make digital pedagogy successful. We are, in many ways, conduits connecting faculty to tools, methods, collaborators, and communities. Now, a note on my institution. Whittier College is a small, formerly Quaker residential liberal arts college located in southeast LA County. Isn't it charming? We're a designated MSI, or Minority Serving Institution, with both HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution, and ANAPISI, Asian American Pacific, Native American Pacific Islander Serving Institution. So roughly 60% of our students identify as students of color, 85% of our students receive financial aid, and in many ways our campus is very rich in diversity of perspectives, student experiences, and faculty expertise. But in many ways, our campus is also very resource poor. And I probably shouldn't be saying some of this publicly, so don't get me in trouble, because I don't have tenure. When I say that we are resource poor, I refer to outdated network infrastructure. We're in Los Angeles, but Wi-Fi is a problem. We have aging physical infrastructure, several years of budget deficits, rather sad dorms. I think we make the list every year for like worst storms in the country. and very limited staffing. At the same time, we've been fortunate enough to receive grants from the Mellon Foundation to spearhead efforts in digital pedagogy and research on our campus. Much of that work is done by 2 staff members, myself included, and 1 faculty PI. This has also meant that faculty are encouraged to teach using digital methods, something you can add to your teaching portfolio for tenure review, and to teach online summer courses to increase revenue for the college. The problem is that despite the grants, despite the encouragement and the mandate from senior administration, these mandates don't align with the resources available on our campus. The offered infrastructure does not have the capacity to facilitate desired institutional outcomes. And this is not something that's limited to just Whittier College. That leads me to my main talking point today, recognizing that digital pedagogy is labor. It is labor that in and of itself is resource intensive. It requires labor, time, training, expertise, and material technologies. Because of this, it is important to recognize that digital pedagogy is difficult to undertake alone. It demands that we, as teachers, as scholars, reevaluate our models of teaching and prepping. The affordances of networked technologies means that we can practice teaching as collaborative work, as community work, whether that is teaching situated within our local communities, attuned to the politics and particularities of our neighboring spaces, or the larger communities of teachers that we build amongst ourselves. After all, we may not all have access to broadband internet. Our students may not be able to afford or even check out laptops to take on digital projects and classes. And we may find that as junior scholars, we're expected to be leading the faculty in digital pedagogy. As the young folks on campus, we are expected to do all the technology. And even we're sometimes called on to mentor our senior colleagues about tools and methods. But we can learn how to work around these obstacles by drawing on collective knowledge. And I'll explain what I mean by that. I want to now talk about my work with a specific project of FemTechNet. And sadly, Anne Balsamo couldn't join us today, but she was going to introduce you all to FemTechNet, which is a network of feminist teachers, artists, and activists. And one of their large projects is the Distributed Open Collaborative Course, also known as the DOC, which emerged as a response to MOOCs, these very hierarchical, top-down, elitist forms of open education. These were designed to have like a core syllabus that could be, I'm trying to think of, offered in local institutions. So like each person at their institution would teach their own version of this feminist technology class. So I work with, in particular, the Situated Critical Race and Media Studies Committee. We affectionately call ourselves SCRAM. And our project is the Critical Race and Ethnic Studies Pedagogy Workbook. And all of these resources that FemTechNet has put together is available on their website, femtechnet.org. And I want to talk about this Critical Race and Ethnic Studies Pedagogy Workbook as an example of tactical networked pedagogy, a model of collective work that can be used to alleviate these issues of disparity between institutional or market-driven expectations and technological and human infrastructure. It's a toolkit for survival in the current academy, especially for teachers who identify as women, people of color, indigenous, queer, and gender non-normative. These are the people who carry extra burdens on our institutions. It is only one of many projects made by and within FemTechNet. Other powerful resources include the Center for Solutions to Online Violence, many publications, and key learning projects. The workbook is built on the open source Scalar Publishing digital publishing platform hosted by the Alliance for Networking Visual Culture at the University of Southern California. The workbook is an open access project that curates and highlights the existing transnational and multiracial projects being done within FemTechNet courses. So this includes crowdsourced syllabi, assignments, reading lists, videos, activities, and other materials to help instructors. This is a collaborative living document that grows when we have time to devote to it and stalls when we don't, but it expands as more teachers teaching at the intersections of gender, race, and technology share their materials. As a committee of primarily junior women of color scholars, we keenly feel the pressures of women of color in academia. We understand that for junior scholars, the labor of developing one's pedagogy is extensive because it involves so much more than just teaching and prepping. So much of this work is affective and unquantifiable. For these teacher scholars, experimentation in the classroom can be a risk. Even though our institutions encourage and exhort us to practice digital pedagogy, to teach online, to design blended learning environments, and to otherwise be innovative teachers, it is not necessarily safe for us to do so. And this is especially the case when an ever-growing percentage of our profession is contingent and precarious. Our workbook is an attempt to mitigate that risk by leveraging the collective intelligence and experience of the FemTechNet network to produce resources for feminist, engaged digital pedagogy and this is the important part, for building human systems of support. Acknowledging the challenges of teaching these sensitive and contentious topics of race and gender in a time of political discord, economic retrenchment, and increasing institutional precarity for departments of ethnic, gender, and humanistic studies, this workbook is an ongoing project to build resources for faculty members who are often overburdened at their home institutions, but are willing to take on that difficult task of teaching about gender and racial inequality as they relate to technology and information culture. Though I'm often skeptical of the technologism of much of the rhetoric surrounding EdTech, the work of networks and groups of FemTechNet, which often hack free and open source networked tools for community building, resource sharing, teaching, and face-to-face connection. These groups have provided a safe haven for folks like myself, who find ourselves lonely only on our campus. Contributing to FemTechNet has been incredibly valuable, even life-sustaining. But we know from experience that this work also has a cost. The cost of time, stress, and in many ways this cost can be balanced by the love of the network and its members, and a commitment to facilitating network pedagogy, which we believe can be used to link geographically and ideologically disparate classes and institutions to allow for fruitful intellectual exchange and public scholarship. We understand that because of its resource-intensive nature, digital pedagogy is best developed in a networked manner, where we can learn from, test, iterate, and revise the work of others, and they can do the same with our work. It is also the potential to make the work of teaching more sustainable, because the work is hard, it is taxing, and distributing that work across the network can help us to manage it. We're still working on that part. We're not really good at managing that work. Very few of us know everything and can teach everything that we're called on to teach. And networks like FemTechNet offer us a way to support each other in this work. FemTechNet may not be the solution for everyone. It is a large, amorphous, and sometimes intimidating network, but alternate communities that serve as these similar technical purposes can be built at the local level anywhere, in the form of faculty learning communities and work groups, collaborations with instructional technologists and librarians, at professional conferences such as this one, or even on Twitter or Facebook, which is where FemTechNet Transform DH started, and sometimes in people's living rooms, right? In the end, the work of teaching is hard, let alone incorporating digital tools and methods. If your digital pedagogy is a tool-driven pedagogy, this is not a model that will work for you. If your pedagogy is guided by learning objectives, critical inquiry, and skepticism, then having a robust community of teacher scholars can not only help you to develop your skills as a teacher, but it can help you to survive the labor expected of you in the academy. That work doesn't have to be done in isolation, and for your health and safety, it shouldn't be. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I'll invite Dr. Leah Coman to the stage. Maha, can you still hear us?
Hi, Leah. I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Can you still hear us? Maha? Yeah. Excellent.
You still hear me? You can't hear me.
It was at her end, but I think it's okay.
Maha, can you say something for us?
Yes, hello.
We
Hi.
have to work on receiving the audio on this side
Okay,
still.
let Leah come and present it.
Well, while we do that, we're going to move on with Dr. Leah Coman.
First of all, may I appreciate ICA and particularly Paula for putting together this plenary. It makes sense to have everybody at different levels of research, so thank you very much for having us. And I want to single out Sister Agnes Lucy Lando from Daystar. She's there. Because of her putting in a word for us, today we have me here. So thank you so much, Sister Lando, for making ICA Africa a reality. So I'll, okay. So as I wait for that,
Well, why don't you go forward and they'll bring up your PowerPoint.
okay. So I'm talking to us about M-learning, which is mobile learning in Africa. So basically what I'm trying to talk to us about is how do we appropriate social media for learning? And there are two things that are two social media platforms that I'll be looking at today, which is the WhatsApp and Facebook, and how basically I'm telling us the stories from Africa, basically. Thank you very much for moving on. Next slide, please. Okay. So, if you look at, when we talk about the WhatsApp, every group is formed for a particular reason. Even the name of the group seems to state some purpose. If you go back a little bit, the previous slide, yeah. So that's an example of a WhatsApp group. I have permission to use it. It's called C4D Symposium. So that's a group that was formed to champion for communication for development symposium. And you can see some of the things happening there. People are communicating. But then there is also an element of someone leaving. WhatsApp gives you an opportunity to leave whenever you feel like leaving and ask to join again. It's almost like an assemblage. You take off and come back. And so, yeah, let's look at quickly at the statistics in Africa. Why should we even care about social media in pedagogy? If you look at that, Nigeria is doing so well at 90-something. And then we have Egypt, Kenya, South Africa. But these are results about 2-3 years ago. Right now, Nigeria is doing 115. So really, there's a big uptake of internet in the universities. And so we ask ourselves, how can we then appropriate it for pedagogy? And so mobile learning. So mobile learning basically is using mobile technologies and or learning at any time. Mobile learning is useful because it allows you to tag in wherever you are, contribute. It allows for collaboration, active learning, and so on and so forth. But again, affordances that mobile phone present, such as the access and the ability to download, share links, interact, make mobile learning an active learning for both the lecturers or the faculty and the students, so they can all step in at any time. And so when you think again about the social media tools, I know I singled out WhatsApp and Facebook because that's what's happening around Africa, but there are plenty of other tools that are being used that have made entry to classrooms, of course, causing scare and curiosity, you can imagine. There are those who are embracing it, and there are those who are thinking, this thing, no way. But this becomes more appealing in developing countries. Why? Because mobile technologies have the capacity to deliver and enhance learning in ways that are completely different from these other parts of the world because, of course, of the different realities there, as opposed to here where we have electricity, computer hardware, internet connectivity, stable, and so on and so forth. We got a lot of power outages and so on, and I'll get to the challenges shortly. Now, some people have researched into this. Mwaboke, 1996 looked at 28 countries in Africa. And of course, the finding that he had was that there is a gap or in training of faculty on media technologies. So it's one thing to have this good thing, but another thing are people trained to use it. And some of these 28 countries, of course, we have Botswana, Eritrea, Ghana, Gambia, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, all those countries. They are about 28, but that was the overaging reality. Now, Mulokwe 2015, about how many decades later, too, also noted there is an impressive uptake of social media technology for professional and social life. However, there was high resistance from old faculty. Of course, this is a new thing, you can imagine. But even as we see this reality, it's also a fact that not much evidence has been documented on its contribution to significant learning experiences. Now, a little bit of reflection for M-learning in Africa. In South Africa, both the Facebook and WhatsApp are being used for pedagogical delivery and, of course, inclusive learning, informal, meaning lecture halls, and also informal spaces. Rambe and Bere also found out that there is a heightened participation. There was high participation when these Facebook and WhatsApp were engaged in pedagogy, meaning that people or students alongside the lecturers were able to contribute. It's like there's a change, there's a shift now. It's not the lecturer contributing and creating the content, even the student has something to bring to the table. Of course, WhatsApp groups are formed every day, that's for sure. But again, according to purpose, there are those who will form it for fundraising. And you're asking fundraising, and we're talking about pedagogy. Yes, part of the things that happen in an academic institution is that there will be losses as we go along the way. Someone may pass on, or relatives may pass on, and they want to quickly put up a group to say, let's contribute and foot the bill and so on and so forth. Others is for planning. So yes, we want to have the C4D like the one I showed earlier on. So how do we plan for this meeting? Who do we invite? And the students also contribute to that. There's also the crowdsourcing. You're thinking about an idea, float it out there, let people build into this story. Before you know it, you have a discursive avenue. Of course, one creates a group, add participants, share content and links, and can delete the group once you think this is no longer of use to me. And that is the positive thing about using the social media, because then there's active and collaborative learning, and then you are not doomed to stay there. At some point, you just feel, you know, I'm out. And after sometimes you realize I can be in, so you can still re-enter. And then, of course, the ability to share. With a WhatsApp, you can share links from YouTube, you can share links, even videos, podcasts. You just share links and the students can access it and contribute to that. And they can even be as easy as, can you reflect on that video? Can we get the feedback? So there's a lot of that. Thank you. Okay, so what are the benefits of M-Learning? Of course, it allows learners to be active participants, hence co-producers rather than passive consumers of content. Of course, you know now there's a shift between the linear approach of teaching. So I know it and someone is receiving what Paolo calls the banking. But now it's like the power is circulating. So it could come from the other side and it could come from this way. So because of that shift of learning where there is now student-centered as opposed to lecturer-centered or facilitator-centered, WhatsApp or Facebook creates that avenue for that to happen. It also allows for networked multimedia communication between self-organizing groups of learners, making it a rich learning experience. What do I mean? Someone else could have something on YouTube who wants to contribute to a debate going on in class. Another one could have, you know, links about a journal, bringing it to the table. It's a rich exchange, okay? Now, it also has opportunities that go beyond classrooms. So once I'm home and I need to, research some more about a paper, I can still do it wherever I am because, of course, it doesn't pay attention to time and space. And then it supports student-centered learning for collaboration. Okay, then what are the challenges? Seem to be a lot of successes. Are there challenges? Sure. Wrong message, wrong destination. What does that mean? I have this crazy idea and I think I was sending to my spouse and hey, it went to class or something. So you have this, and that's just one. It could be a wrong message to wrong destination. Of course, even though there is an opportunity to reply and say, I'm sorry guys, that was not meant for this group, the damage is done. There's also the constraints of technological infrastructure leading to problems with internet access. I mentioned earlier the power outages and so on and so forth. And so even as the students and faculty may resolve to using the internet bundles, that's costly as well. I mean, how much can you access with that? Especially the downloads, it takes a lot of that. There's this issue of space. There's also unsupportive institutions. Earlier on, I did mention the issue of old faculty thinking that this is not their thing. There are also institutions who do not embrace this. Because if you think about having mobile phone in class, it is the connotation is that this is disruptive. I mean, you're not paying attention. All you'll be doing is chatting up and not focusing. So all mobile phones off or putting aside. That in itself is a challenge if we want to step into this new approach. Then there's the training and investment into M-Learning pedagogy, of course, still wanting. And that is explained by an earlier point. There's also the high cost of internet. I think I did mention that. Limited access to learning materials, incompatibility of university learning management systems with the mobile phone, and so that can be a challenge in itself. Also, mobile learning is disruptive to mature married students. Actually, when these guys did this study, Rambe and Bere, they noticed that actually for married students, that was very problematic. Of course, there's an upside now. Everybody's going back to school in the evening. But you don't want to go home and there's this WhatsApp message asking you other things that you're thinking, no, it's home time. So it's a bit disrupting for them, and then raising questions, who are you getting the message from? Who just texted you, and so on and so forth. And then there's, of course, insufficient bandwidth. I think I said that. Yes. Then there's a lack of special skills and knowledge to use mobile devices. The conclusion, with a shift in learning from teacher-centered to student-centered, of course, there's need to ensure that there's collaboration, active learning, where the students and faculty co-create content, then the ability to share for internet links and terms, and to fill up a gap. Just before we go to the last slide, I did mention that I would say something about, there's a new program that is being piloted in Kenya. It's called KENET, which is Kenya Education Network. What that means is that there's a remote learning. So if you have a university that has different campuses, they are networked. So I have one teacher teaching 4 different campuses at the same time. Of course, we know that's easy for the institution, more money, but for the lecturer, that's torture. And then finally, let's just go to the last slide. Then I figured it's lunchtime. Thank you.
I think we're still not getting audio through from Dr. Bali. So I think what we're going to do is you two can troubleshoot that. Yeah? And we'll move forward to Allison and Jamie. Okay? And can you bring up that PowerPoint, JP? Allison and Jamie's PowerPoint? Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
So we're taking a little bit of a different angle on pedagogy today, and we're talking about the notion of gamification and how you might be able to move people to engage in different ways using game mechanisms. And JP, I apologize, we have lots of clicks and builds, so I'm just gonna point at you and we'll see how this goes. So we've been talking about interventions, right? It may at first seem a little bit weird to think about a game as an intervention, but it totally is. And we're going to talk through some ideas about mechanisms and outcomes and how you can actually go about strategizing ways to incorporate game elements into different types of pedagogical endeavors, as well as other types of contexts. Please. As we talk through today, we're going to be using ICA Play, the game that our team developed for this conference. How many of you played ICA Play in some way, shape, or form? Okay, cool. That actually seems to reflect.
I was going to say, yes, that's quite reflective, actually. Okay, perfect.
If you did not get a chance to participate or chose not to participate, this is a little bit of a rundown of what the game was actually like. So we had the ICA, the mobile app, right? And there was a little game center where you could enter some codes. You could get codes, which earns you points in lots of different ways. In that second picture there, people had little emojis with codes, so you could enter the codes from there. There were daily quests, and this was one out by the big face sculpture thing, right? And then you could send in pictures, and this is lovely Claire Grawl, and very talented. She drew, her picture was actually a cartoon she had drawn, right? And then there was this leaderboard within the app, so you could always see who was leading in points at any given time. It updated in real time and refreshed every day. Yes.
This is appropriate.
You can enter it now.
Those
the game
of
is
you who
still
are playing,
running.
here you are. Daily quest. You're welcome. All right. So when we talk about gamification broadly,
there was already a pre-conference on gamification, but we thought we'd introduce it just a little bit to this audience and then specifically talk about how we applied some of the principles of gamification to the ICA conference and some lessons we learned and some things we found out along the way. So what is gamification? Very basic definition. Gamification is basically the use of game design elements or design elements characteristic of games in non-game contexts. Now, this is often, well, not often, but sometimes can be derided as just slapping on sort of extrinsic motivators to things that people don't want to do. So for example, like I think we have some examples on the next slide. Using mechanics that are sort of intrinsic to games to get people to do things that they might not otherwise want to participate in. What are some of these mechanics that we're talking about? Things like social mechanics, right? Which may be in the game world or not in the game world. Looking at interdependence, leaderboards, competition, getting people's behavioral momentum so that we can actually incentivize certain types of behaviors and de-incentivize other types of behaviors via game rewards in the game system. But beyond just sort of these sort of superficial pokes and prods, carrots and sticks. We're also looking at things like how do we adopt a playful space, right? So how are we looking at collaboration, competition? How are people using the game design elements in order to build a playful experience for themselves using this framework? We can talk about that in terms of the ludic mechanisms and the ways in which we talk about play more broadly or play context. We can look at things like progress and feedback. How do we get people to keep playing the game? What are things that make them want to continue playing? To keep doing the behaviors, to get the rewards, to also enjoy these sorts of social momentums. Rewards, points progression, exploration and discovery, different types of constraints. So are people able to continually enter one code and just keep doing one behavior over and over, or do people need to change up their behavior in order to experience all the rewards of the games? Now, gamification has, broadly been adopted from a commercial standpoint, things like Foursquare, Photocracy, or Khan Academy that are gamifying or putting these sort of extrinsic incentives or using these ludic mechanisms into things like going to cafes, working out, learning things. Particularly because this is a closing plenary on pedagogical innovations and technology, we wanted to talk about specifically some of these gamified systems that are available specifically for your classroom. So you can adopt it in your classroom, gamify points for quizzes, test participation, collaborative group work, that kind of thing. Sort of put a playful element into your classroom. Specifically, when I worked at the Free University, we gamified an onboarding experience for new students coming into the university. We worked with IC3D Media to develop an app that taught students about the university, and we saw greater engagement, greater learning about the university, and students coming in with a little bit more, they felt more part of the community based on this game experience.
And just as an extension of that last slide, one amazing approach that I found in grad seminars is to, if you've ever played an MMO or a massively multiplayer online game, there are often these boss fights where you fight really, really powerful monsters. And I basically turned oral defenses into boss fights. And they engage in interdependent defense, where some people, if someone's having a little bit of trouble, they can then, a classmate can come in and then help them out, and then they might earn different levels of points in that way. It works really fantastic. So in terms of unpacking this idea of a playful intervention a little bit, it's important to understand play. Play is different than games. Games are like the structures and the challenge systems, and play is the experience, right? So a play is any activity that is entirely voluntary, as Allison mentioned, intrinsically motivated, and the idea is that there's some kind of enjoyable outcome, whether it's the feeling of having fun or feelings of arousal and excitement. There's some kind of positive outcome. In short, it's taking something that feels a little bit like this. It's my punchline, man. And making it a little bit more like this, right? So you're not game designers, most likely. I'm not a game designer. Allison isn't a game designer. So how do we actually go about this process of taking all of those mechanisms she just talked about and actually implementing them in a meaningful way? We do it by focusing on those elements, those mechanisms, those procedures, and basically like reverse engineering. So in designing ICA Play, we started with our outcome. Where did we actually want to end up? For us, Paula's charge for us was to come up with a way to actually get people to interact with each other, especially across all of these divisional boundaries that we are often voluntarily or involuntarily, knowingly or not subject to, right? And then we said, okay, so what are all of the social and psychological processes that have to actually unfold to make that happen? For us, it is, okay, let's get people to have that initial contact with each other, right? And then to engage in some kind of interaction, right? What mechanics, here's where those mechanics come back in. What mechanics actually have to be in place in order to facilitate those processes? Well, that's fine, we can keep cruising through. We decided that the way to actually make that happen is to draw on interdependence, right? That idea that not everybody can win without the help of other people. And so everybody had discrete codes. Well, there were 40 codes, and you had to actually go and seek those out. And then we had this scanning mechanism. And if you'll notice if you have your code on your badge, it's pretty small. You can try to do a drive-by clicking, but in most cases, you actually need to go up and talk to the person and actually request permission to get their code, right? And then people needed a tool. Well, we decided after much negotiation that we would go to where they already were instead of sort of taking the if you build it, they will come approach. We had assumed that most people at ICA would be using the mobile app. So with JP's help, we were able to integrate it. And then, okay, now we need to layer on these motivating factors. After going through a couple of different variations on possibilities for this, we decided to do it at an individual level instead of some more collaborative artwork project based on participation or a charity donation that maybe not everybody would fully buy into. And then we put a little bit of polish on it, right? And that's where, after debating Pokemon for a while, collect them all, right? We moved to more of like a perhaps more universally appealing emoji approach.
So how does this work for ICA Play, and what did we learn? Well, just a quick look at the metrics. I just analyzed these this morning, so this is like hot data, fresh off the app. 215 unique players. We had 2,700 unique code entries, so that's every time someone's putting a code into their app. As you can see, there was a surge in use Thursday, Friday, and then a drop-off Saturday, Sunday. That's very typical of these kinds of interventions. Entries by type. One thing that we thought was really promising is that the main mechanism for the app was to interact with people. And what we see is, if you look at the highlighted 1,500 different interactions, that's the 20-point regular fish people. So going around talking to people, getting their codes. It's not hunting out the big fish, the fellows and the presidents. It's not always doing the quest, but it was really individual members interacting with each other. So we were really excited about that. Other outcomes. Okay, so other outcomes that we saw that were not necessarily quantifiable were that people were talking about the app, that it was actually, even when people weren't playing, they were talking about playing, they were making fun of their friends who were playing, they were making fun of me for tweeting so much, having a good time with it though, creating that really playful space and having that playful interaction, which was another outcome that we were hoping for. So we were really, really excited to see that people were taking our offering and making it into their own. And that was what we were hoping for. Indeed, some people last night were saying, we were playing too, but we weren't actually playing. Some of the lessons that we definitely learned this time was to know your audience and its boundaries. Some people were concerned, what's going to happen with these data? What are you guys selling? We were like, we're just selling fun. Have a good time. Individual versus institutional concerns. We played at the individual level instead of doing a competition between divisions. Technological constraints. A lot of people were having trouble with the Twitter app via the Android phone, and people that were international were mostly on the Wi-Fi at the hotel. So we had to sort of tweak our gameful intervention to accommodate these things. We also need to recognize these alternative modes of play. We're almost there, JP. Long term, we'd like to try to mitigate that drop off so that by escalating rewards through the course of play. And then finally, honestly, JP took a lot of this on himself, putting the codes in the different places, putting the quests up every day, helping us decide the best photo at night, and tweeting out the winner every day. It was a lot of work for one man. You're really an angel, hence the halo. But we need to figure out a better way to facilitate it. I think this was a really good start, but we can make it more smooth in the future. So that's what we have.
Waiting to see if we have audio from Dr. Bali.
Okay, so it was.
Just 1 minute. We're trying to work the audio problem with Dr. Bali. It's not. We did check that. Thank you.
She's was trying to record just in case.
She is talking. Is she sure her mic isn't muted?
It's muted because the mute.
Yeah.
Are you sure you've unmuted your mic, Dr. Bali?
Hi.
Oh, great sounds of relief and happiness on this side. Welcome.
Hi.
So pleased to have you. I know you've been following. They're cheering, they're clapping for you. It is your turn. The floor is yours, Dr. Bali, for your presentation.
Oh, awesome. I was actually just recording something just in case you guys couldn't hear me. But it's great that you can. So I'm Bailey from the American University in Cairo, but I'm also the co-founder and co-director of Virtually Connecting. And I'm gonna just share my screen so that as I explain what Virtually Connecting is, you can sort of also see some pictures of it. So just give me a second to set that up.
We do, and I think we're getting a little feedback here, so I think if you slow down a little, the audio will be perfect.
Okay.
We see. Sure.
You can see the screen?
Yep, we've got it.
Great, awesome. So I'm going to talk about disrupting power conferences through virtually connecting. I know Paula mentioned that in her introduction, but I'll also explain what that is in a second. So I'm the co-founder and co-director of Virtually Connecting. And I start with this quote by Sarah Ahmed, which is that a wall does not appear to those who do not come up against it. And even though I can't see the audience, I'm just going to ask them this question anyway. How many of you have little or no opportunities to attend, just have good conferences in their field in an affordable way or that are nearby? And
So
I can't see the hands up, but you can tell me, Paula, yeah.
How many of you have the opportunity or have troubles attending conferences because of affordability issues? I think she's looking for hands. All right, you've got like half the room here.
Wow, okay. How many people are single parents or parents of young children or who don't have very supportive partners or whatever, and they can't travel because they have children, or at some point in their lives they couldn't travel because they had children?
Issues traveling because single parenting or childcare issues. A few, and you know what? We had free childcare here, Dr. Bali, just so you know.
Oh, that's awesome. Next time.
Uh-huh.
And okay, so I'm just going to move on from there. What happened with Virtually Connecting started because I was having problems getting to conferences because my child was very young at the time, and coming all the way here from Egypt to the US was very complicated. Like I could get the funding for myself, then who was going to take care of my child here or there? And the particular conference that I wanted to go to didn't offer on-site daycare. And even though I was on the organizing committee and we tried to make it work, it didn't. And in a lot of educational technology conferences, that doesn't happen. There is no usually on-site daycare, and that's always an issue. And so even though I was presenting a lot of sessions with others, what I felt like I was missing was not the presenting, because I could do something like what we're doing here now. What I felt like I was missing was the social aspect of conferences. It's the conversations that you have in the hallways. And that really helps to build social capital and networking and things like that. And so basically, even though there was a wall in front of me, I decided not to see it as a wall. I decided to see it as a window. With the help of one of my friends, Rebecca Hogue, she offered to connect me to people at conferences through her phone or her laptop. And informally bring people to talk to me. And we decided, I was on the organizing committee at a conference, and I said, well, why don't we open up those conversations to other people? So I'd be having a session with a keynote speaker, but other people at the event who couldn't be at the event virtually join that conversation and have a conversation with those people for like half an hour or so during the day. And we did several of those. We live streamed them and we invited other people to join us. And after that conference was over, a lot of people seemed to feel like this was something that could be beneficial to them. And they said, why don't you do it at other conferences? And people would start going to conferences and offering to be our, what we call on-site buddy, helping us connect to people at the conference so that we can have those conversations. And the team has grown now. We have 3 co-directors, Rebecca, Autumn Keynes, and myself. We have advisors, and we have like over 100 volunteers who, when they go to a conference, and people who are virtual, and we help make that work, and we help other people who can't be there join in those conversations, even if they're not part of our community. And besides the actual sessions that we do at conferences, we've also been working on sort of advocating for the voices of people who can't be present in our own presentations. So we do conference presentations describing what virtually connecting, a little bit like what I'm doing right now, but we also do sort of like workshops, building, for example, empathy for people who can't be there. And this particular workshop with Autumn Keynes, who's one of our directors, people carrying laptops, people virtually on them. And what we've done is we did breakout sessions where we would have discussions of the session. And so you're not talking about who's not there without that person actually being part of that conversation. And that kind of thing is really important and very relevant to people who teach students who aren't there, or people who teach some of their students who they do get to see face-to-face, and some of them that they don't. And I think it sort of transfers to that kind of pedagogy as well. And one of the things is we started out, and we still are a grassroots movement. We don't have funding. We're all volunteers. But this particular photo, when I was in London last month, was taken by the co-chair conference. And one of the people sitting in that photo was a co-chair of that conference. And the thing is it disruptive if the conference supporting it? At the beginning, we had some resistance to organizers about virtually connecting, but the more orthodox conferences, the more resistance it is to have something like virtually connecting, and the more radical a conference ethos is, the happier they are to have something like this. And they sort of like the idea of opening it up. And this was a conference on open education, so opening up things like that is obviously, sort of goes well with their ethos. But there are some conferences where they actually see it as good PR for the conference, but we don't do it for the conference. We do it for the virtual folks who want to be there, who want to talk to others. And the thing is that we've learned over time that even the people who go on site appreciate being able to talk to people who aren't there. So for example, Amy Collier, who was a frequent on-site guest and is now one of our advisory buddies, says that it reminds people who can attend a conference in person that there are important voices outside the room that should be heard in these professional contexts. And so these conversations aren't about the on-site people talking at the virtual folks, but a conversation among all of us. And so the people on site who've been together for 3 or 4 days get to hear a different voice. And Christian Friedrich, who's one of our frequent buddies, and he's from Germany, and he was talking about how conference organizers and funding organizations see that the inclusion of unheard voice is not really it's a problem, and then it's not a problem. Virtually Connect sort of solves that problem. It's a community using very simple technology, because more of a community than anything else, and we use whatever technology is available that's free. Google Hangouts is just the best one for live streaming and allowing people to join in and so on. Right. But if there were any other technology that did that, we don't care. It's not about the technology. It's about just using something that's there to be able to facilitate those conversations. I'm going to stop here so that I don't take up too much time.
Yeah, I think we have a couple more minutes because we had technical problems, as you know.
I could stop and answer questions later, I think. Our manifesto is online, and I'd like to listen to others kind of next.
That's great. Thank you so much, Maha. I really appreciate the papers that are really, all of you, I think, are thinking about sort of the soft work behind successes using digital technology, building communities, having virtual connections with those who can't have their voices heard, forming communities of co-productivity and co-production through digital technologies. Same thing, the soft work of FemTechNet, right? Working behind the scenes so that people without access get access. And then Andy, we're low on time, but come on up and do you want to give a quick presentation on some of your work?
I can
Yeah, so Andy uses digital media and for pedagogical practices that bring students into environmental activism, for example. So we'll hear a bit from Andy.
Yeah, so just quickly, I've been interested in how to get two professors in the same room at the same time, from different disciplines, two or more, right? And because a lot of universities talk about interdisciplinary teaching and research, but they don't provide very straightforward ways to make that happen. So this semester, I put together 4 courses from across campus at Florida State. We had 130 students, 5 faculty members, all working on what was designated as the #1 most threatened river in the U.S. In April 2016, so about a year ago. So we had students from, I taught a video production class, there was a social media campaigns class, there were environmental science and policy capstone major course, graduating seniors, and a nonfiction English class. We produced a whole series of products, which you can see at ApalachicoLaRiverProject.com. And I think just, a couple of quick takeaways here are the student response to this. This river is an hour west of Tallahassee. Almost 40% of the students in the first class survey didn't even know where the river was, couldn't locate it. So by the end, they had bonded with it because they had gotten out there. We partnered with the Apalachicola Riverkeeper Environmental Group, and they organized a dozen trips for students, kayaks, hiking trips, a lot of motorboat excursions way up into the swamps that are associated with the river system. We got out on oyster boats, and they provided context, deep context of the community so that the students didn't have to go and figure out who to talk to. They were immediately put in touch with Tupelo honeykeepers who are seeing the decline of the Tupelo trees, the oystermen who are seeing the decline of the productivity of the bay, longtime houseboat residents that talk about the culture, historians that talk about a slave fort where the slaves hid out with Seminole Indians, escaped slaves, and defended themselves for many years. So the sites of politics, culture, environment, and it offered this incredible opportunity for the students, and that their work really excelled because they knew I wasn't the only one looking at it. They knew it wasn't just about fulfilling an assignment. They knew it mattered to the community. They knew community members were watching. On the video side, they would get comments back from the scientists they had interviewed and said, that's not quite right, you need to correct this, or to make sure things were accurate. They were getting this real direct feedback from the community. So I think that raised the stakes and raised their commitment. On the downside, there were faculty members who wanted to teach what they wanted to teach and didn't want to completely give themselves over to my grand scheme. So I think getting colleagues aligned with a project can be challenging. I was fortunate to have a project called Troubled Waters by Jessica Ross, and a couple of colleagues up at Haverford on the Delaware River. So I could point to that and say, okay, here's what 50 students at Haverford did on the Delaware. And that's a very robust website. There's another one called Blue Ether, which is about the freshwater springs in Florida. That's a very robust interdisciplinary effort. So we're beginning to see more of these projects taking place, and sharing kind of the successes and failures, I think, is critical to developing some good interdisciplinary practices. And again, just one more note on this, on the colleagues question. And one trick I found, the one takeaway here is, instead of trying to get the university to decide who gets credit, if you can get your classes to meet at the same time, have separate classes, but then agree that you're going to work on it, then you can at times all meet together and get everybody in the same room, but at times meet separately. Everybody still retains their FTE. There's no, you don't run into big administrative problems, but that's really the trick to making these projects work and bypassing some of the bureaucracies at all of our institutions, I think. So I'd be happy to talk more and share more. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you've been very patient, so I'm going to hand the microphone over to you and take a few questions for the panel. And if you have a question that goes to a number of people or could be answered, then those are the best kinds of questions. Do you want to come up and I'll hand you a mic? Oh, JP's got a mic.
This is a question, I guess, all of you, I've experimented with some of the things that you mentioned in terms of gamification, using mobile technology, classroom engagement. And I'm wondering how all of you who have invested so much time in these things, and also interdisciplinary projects, how you incorporate or acknowledge by your institution within your promotion versus the sometimes thousands of extra hours that are involved in such projects. On the one hand, I'm very passionate about it because I know it's good for the students. On the other hand, my institution sees it as a ridiculous waste of time.
That's a great question. I'll repeat it for Dr. Bali. So the question is, when you're putting so many hours into the creation of innovative pedagogy for the classroom using digital technology, how do you package it so that you get credit on your portfolio for tenure and promotion, which is a question we all have. Who's got a great answer for that? I think maybe Andy has a answer for that.
Well, I'm tenured, so I.
But you had to do it.
But what I thought is that in these troubled times, my impulse has been, okay, what can I do locally? What can I do to affect my immediate world? Because the news is daunting. So partnering with local groups and building alliances seems pretty critical right now. And so this doesn't necessarily answer your question about how to do it on short time and get credit for it, but I think building these alliances is going to help us as things deteriorate.
I couldn't hear Andy, but if someone else wants to speak, I could speak after them.
Yeah, sorry. So Maha, do you want to take that question as well? Andy was just talking about a commitment to service.
Okay, commitment to serving regardless of tenure and promotion. Is that what you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of us probably have that. I'm more like Anne. I mean, I am faculty, but I'm not tenure track. So I have this very murky, like, what am I supposed to do to get promoted and stuff. But I think with Virtually Connecting specifically, one of the things I did was to actually, one time my boss and the director and the associate director were going to a conference, and I invited them to participate in Virtually Connecting, and they saw the value right then by being part of it. So I think whenever you have a chance to have your colleagues actually participate, I've got a couple of other colleagues who are involved, but just having my boss be part of the session, she just got it, and she signed up to our newsletter, and she became really interested in what we're doing, and she understood what was happening. She understood how I stay up to date with what's happening in EdTech and why I'm on that cutting edge, even though she knows that I don't travel a lot. You know what I mean?
Win support from allies, especially important ones in the university structure. Yeah. Anybody else? Did you have something, Jamie?
I guess I'm in a lucky position that my chair sees some intrinsic value in these types of things. But part of my job, he's not a tech person at all, is to translate for him why all this matters. And so if you have the opportunity to make a personal statement along your package for us in every year, help tell a story about why this matters and what the outcomes are or might be, and how this might not only serve students immediately, but also perhaps positioning your department or your college or your university as maybe a thought leader in a particular area.
Yeah. Anybody else? I think a couple of things I would say is package it as documentation to the extent that you can, even if you self-publish it online, and try to circulate it so you have numbers around dissemination. Try to disseminate it through giving talks about it. If you can publish a paper on it, anything that translates for people that tend to count numbers. Another question. In the back, I'll repeat it for you, Dr. Bali.
Hi there, thank you. That's great. I'm from Western Australia, and I teach business studies. So we use a lot of technology in our teaching. I was just wondering about two levels of accessibility issue. So the first is the people who don't want to use Facebook to engage with the teacher of any kind, or they don't want to use WhatsApp for that, and so they're trying to use multiple technologies.
Yeah.
And the other thing is,
enabler accessibility, city with disabilities, and actually incorporate them into classes.
So the question is, what about if students are rejecting a platform they're using like Google Hangout or Facebook for political reasons, ethical reasons? And the second question is thinking about a wide array of questions of accessibility, including disability, like lack of hearing and things like that. That's a great question, Leah.
I don't know if your mic's on.
All right. Yeah, you're right. There are people who express different tests or preference. They don't want Facebook or they don't want WhatsApp. But what has happened in the cases that I just said is that they will also have a group email. So if that doesn't work, there's also another avenue. So there's a group email, there's the WhatsApp, there's also the texting. So ideally, what's the word I'm looking for? It's complex in nature, but there are other ways in which they can veer off. For example, you can decide for a short time that you're going to maintain your privacy. So you avoid the blue tag thing, so they don't know you receive the message, but after some time they realize, okay, I'm gonna have a blue tag. So it's multifaceted, but yes, they can do the group email if they don't want the other one. Actually, there's also the feeling that email is more official, WhatsApp is more like chit-chatting, but now we're trying to say that you can also use WhatsApp for that.
Mm-hmm. Anne, I wonder if you want to take that in terms of cultural access issues, like lack of literacy or familiarity.
Yeah, I think, well, on our campus, we find that, so there are a couple of things. I think so Mental Ed is really interested in issues of like safety and security and data bills. So one of the things that instructors are always doing is giving students a lot of different options, so they can opt out of these digital projects as long as they engage with it in some manner. So giving them written options, for example, essays. But on our campus, we are doing multiple kinds of learning, teaching our students not just how to use the tools. So we're actually like, we're learning a lot of mobile technologies because that's what our students have available for our learning. They may not have laptops, but they'll have their phones. We also have to be really careful about how we ask them to use their phones in the classroom, because the fact that they have their phones around them and can be accessible at any time can be quite problematic. So, like teaching them how to use those tools, but also how to make sure those tools meet the terms of services when it's being using these kinds of tools for those purposes. There's so many different levels of this.
So I'm quite cognizant that we are 10 minutes over and you've all been sitting patiently waiting for us to fix our technological problems. So thank you to the audience, but please let me invite you to come up and speak with our scholars, and you can come right up here and talk to Dr. Vale from the podium. So will you join me in thanking our speakers and our tech support? Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Maha. You know, every time we learn a lot.
I know.
Every time
you
we
never
learn
know what the technical issue is
how
going
it's
to be.
different. I know. And you know what? We can really have, can I say this on the speaker? I think we have Apple to blame in some regard, because they take away our ports, right? So you go to plug in and the ports aren't there, right? And you need sort of 10 adapters.
Yeah, that.
Does anybody want to come up and say hi? Why doesn't the panel come up here and say hi to you, Maha? As long as we're all here, we can virtually connect.
That'd be great. I didn't see everyone's face. I think the only person whose face I saw clearly was Leah.
Yes.
Hi, Anne.
Here's
Anne. Anne was my
your
on-site
virtual buddy. Yeah. And then
Still, yeah.
Leah.
Everyone else was too busy.
Hi,
Thank
Leah,
you so much. Thank you so much, Leah. Thank you. This is her laptop. Don't forget to get my.
Allison, do you want to come say hi to Maha? Allison Egan.
Thank
you. ICA Play.
Nice to meet you.
And Andy, and will you guys come say hi to Maha?
Sorry about that.
Well, it happens, you know.
Yeah, it
Those of us in
happens.
social media know these things.
Hi there. Nice
Jamie
to see you.
Banks.
Hi, Jamie.
And yes, hi.
This is great.
Hey.
Hi, how are you?
We're gonna take a picture, and you know what? We're
Yeah, do it, because then we're gonna stand here and you're on the screen.
Okay.
Allison and Leia, we're gonna take a picture. Should we go
I
down
got
and
a hug?
stand in front of the screen? Let's go down. We're getting you in this.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Sorry for the technical stuff, guys. It's better than another. Was it? Okay, I'm gonna do two. One, yeah, I feel like it's like 30% of the
Yeah, because you can actually that's offline as well. So it's things like Jamie talks about making the exam a boss fight or making the quizzes like
Hello, my friend. How are you? Hi, how are you?